Everybody, Akash Inti here with a brief biotech basic video on what are antibodies. I'm going to talk a little bit about what are they themselves, their relationship to the biotech industry, and then lastly, we'll talk about, I guess, a few of the important antibodies that have been developed through the past. So, with that, what are antibodies? Antibodies are blood proteins found in your blood, obviously, and these proteins are used uh, for your immune system as a part of your immune system. They bind to antigens or foreign substances of the body, or what the body identifies as foreign substances. These are tagged by antibodies, so you can think of them as tags, and then white blood cells will come and binds to the antibody and eat it. So it's kind of the big picture way to think about them. Now, why would they be important? Well, you could imagine that in certain diseases, these antigens that are could be expressed on cancer cells, for example. So, antigens, as we talked about, is a way that the body identifies that the cell or the molecule, what have you, is a foreign substance. So as I mentioned again, the antibody binds to the antigen and thus recruits uh, white blood cells to come along. Important to note that um, the structure of an antibody is like a Y. So I'll draw it very quickly over here. And there's two chains, not two chains, the rapper, but he is an interesting guy. Rather, there's two chains to an antibody, light and heavy chains. And it has a very interesting structure. So as you can see here, the antibody looks like a Y. So you have a heavy chain here, which is bound. There's a second heavy chain here, so I'll draw it in. Oop. So that's that's supposed to be right next to there. So there's six of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's another one here. 6. So there's 6 heavy chains and 2 light chains. The light chains are on the outsides, and one might ask, well, what's a heavy chain? What's a light chain? What am I even talking about there? It's the types of proteins that are in a sequence, and the sequence that they're in gives a different type of structure. So the heavy chains are more structurally stable, whereas the light chains are a little bit more like free-flowy. This is important because the binding site, as I talked about, the receptor-ligand interaction, happens at the ends of the Y. So going back to our little image over here, it happens at the ends of the Y over here. So these are two sites that receptor ligand binding can occur. Getting back to what is the importance of antibodies to the drug industry? Well, antibodies binding to an antigen will trigger that whole immune cascade. When I say immune cascade, it's the idea that it attracts white blood cells to digest it. So thinking of like the immune response. This is very important for binding for cancer, is one great example where a lot of antigens have been expressed on tumor cells or cancer cells. So by using an antibody to binds to the antigen, the tumor antigen, you can have white blood cells attack these tumor cells. So it's been a really powerful tool in that regard, as well as in autoimmune diseases. So examples of this would be the TNF alpha inhibitors, known as Rituxan. Rituximab is a very great example of this. It's a TNF alpha inhibitor. TNF alpha is a cytokine. So this cytokine particularly will recruit white blood cells to that particular site in the area and the location of the body. So it's usually at joints for the use of rituximab. TNF alpha recruits this, so by having a antibody attack TNF alpha, it will stop the inflammation. So it'll eat these inflammation signals, and thus inflammation and swelling should go down. This is what's seen. Rituximab and Rituxan is used in rheumatoid arthritis, along with, I think, psoriatic arthritis, psoriasis, a whole host of autoimmune diseases. But the whole idea there being that by eating the signal that says turn on the immune system, you have an antibody that binds to that and then recruits the immune system to eat it. So it actually does the opposite, which is quite interesting and a very cool approach, in my opinion. Lastly, we're talking about what is the importance. We talked about the importance. We talked about what they are. We talked about the importance, and we talked about the structure. So I think that's what we covered for today. Let me know if you guys have any questions.